I think my biggest strength is a combination, which is quite a boring answer, but I think is the truth. Like I'm socially skilled enough to be amongst players and talk to players and have a feeling for, the personality of people and maybe what they need and stuff like that. And I'm tactically sound too. Like I've seen a lot of floorball during my during my days. I've had obviously the benefits of being 100% employed as a coach for a longer time now, meaning that I can see a lot of games. So I know the sport. I'm good at the sport, and I got education. Like I got my sports studies, my degrees in sports from the university. So I think that combination makes me a decent coach. And then there are, of course, so many things that can go wrong, like results wise. But I have this security now in me that if I take on a job, I'll do a good job. I can guarantee a good job, but I can't guarantee results, of course. And that kind of leads me to my weaknesses as well. Like I'm naive, which is a weakness. I can get stowed in to my own ideas and I have trouble letting them go at times. Because I believe so much in what I do that I can at times be naive, and I can at times probably overestimate my own ideas, which isn't a good thing. And earlier in my career, I've had the wrong definition of being a nice guy, like I told you earlier. Maybe I've been painting pink clouds for people, and then it's come back to bite me later on. So I have so much to develop, but I've grown into my role as a coach now. I know who I am now. I don't. That's the thing. I don't handle my emotions. I've tried to, and I know people say this a lot of time, and I hear that a lot in Switzerland, for example, that they think it's very important to handle your emotions. And I would be like this guy in Me, Myself, and Irene, where he just turns into Hank after a while because it's just exploding on him, right? And that would be faking myself a little bit. So I am emotional, and so far it's been a little bit take it or leave it thing for people who employ me, right? Though it's of course important for me that it doesn't spill out over our performance. For an example, I mean, if I would take a penalty for arguing with refs, for an example, that would be a totally bad thing, and I don't want to make it sound like I encourage that, because I don't. Of course not. I want to use my emotions to something positive, but I've tried to control them, and I just don't. First and foremost, we're struggling in Switzerland with the status of the sport. Like we're trying to work with our players to make them prioritize floorball even higher than they do, and we're definitely heading the right way here. Like we've been so happy to get support from the Swiss state and from the Swiss army, so that we have a lot of our players up to 40% employed via the Swiss army, which is a really cool thing and a huge leap for us, like having people not working 100% all the time and being able to track them better using athletes, for an example, which is an amazing tool for us to do this. So it's been a must for us while having this increased amount of floorball time in people's lives, being able to track them, seeing that they don't use their spare time to play PlayStation, but they actually use it in a smart way. So that's one thing, like making floorball more important for people. Another challenge is that we are not the best team on paper. Like the Swedes have so many. I think the Swedes have approximately 120,000 licensed players, and there's almost 1 million people in Sweden who regularly play floorball. Like it's huge up here. And Switzerland, I think we have 34,000 licensed players. So only the mathematics there is a big challenge. And the Finns are the reigning world championships right now. The Czechs are doing a great job. The sport's definitely developing in Latvia, in Germany. North America will be coming. Southeast Asia is working. So one big challenge is trying to win championships with the not best team on paper. But we're finding ways to compensate. Like I love working with Swiss people It's a really good match to me, like the problem-based solving things that I talked about earlier. They're just amazing with that. And I have this vision in my coaching. We mentioned the philosophy earlier, but the vision stands maybe above the philosophy. And me and my coaching staff right now, we're talking about that the vision for us is that we will build a team that is so good that we don't need like a jackpot performance anymore to actually be able to beat the best ones, but that like an average performance should be able to make us competitive at the top level, which is a vision. So it doesn't need to be realistic. But that's what we work for, and that's when I went up today. That's what's in my head, right? I want to make this team so good that we could one day win a world championships with being decent, which is a tricky challenge. And then the third challenge for me right now is I have so much thoughts in my head after the pandemic time, like being able to use my time in watching NBA basketball, watching NHL ice hockey, watching NFL, watching other sports here in Sweden that are not too far away from floorball. And I'm trying to sort out what I'm going to steal from what sport right now and what can be incorporated into floorball. So a big thing for me during the pandemic time has been to make sure that we work harder than the other national teams, that we can use something beneficial from this time. So I'm trying to sort my thoughts out there in terms of, I have so much time for myself, but I don't meet the players too often, right? Because they play in their club teams, etc. So it's a little bit kill your darlings thing. What do I use with the team? What do I throw away? Stuff like that. So yeah, that would be my main challenges at the time. I should. I don't. So far, I've done it my own way because I've always been a little bit copy paste afraid during my career. Like I've understood with myself that once I get the truth served to me on a plate from someone and someone goes, yeah, this is why we do this, it cramps my own imagination a little bit, because then I just think like they do and I have a tougher time getting out of the box. So I think one part's probably laziness too, that I haven't like reached out to. No, not laziness, that's the wrong word, but I haven't reached out to people at times because I don't want to bother them, even though I know I could probably give something back to them. But so I'm more studying the game and I try to steal things but modify them. Like I never want to take them one-to-one, because I want to take stuff and I want to do something, adapt it to myself, adapt it to my coaching philosophy, adapt it to my sports. But it definitely could be a thing that I could do moving forward, seeking more interviews with people or working with someone for a week, or being the right hand to a hockey coach for a week or something like that. Something I'm definitely thinking about, but that hasn't happened yet. I've only been taking the things that I think make most sense. Maybe sometimes you underestimate yourself a little bit, thinking I wouldn't be able to give something back to them, which I probably could. And like you're so true. It's so true what you're saying here. Like also when you're maybe with other coaches in some kind of way, maybe there's an education or whatever it is, you're more often than not, you're coming out of the education saying, well, the best thing was actually talking to the other coaches. So, well, I agree 100%. It's good that you asked that question. That might put some fire under my butt to actually get something done here in the near future. A huge thing when motivating player, I think there are two different things. Like one, I think it's very important for us to have a clear set way of how we want to approach our sport. In this my example, it's pretty easy because we're participating in the World Championships, which makes it very easy for us to have the goal that, we're among the top clubs, top teams in the world, top nations in the world. So it would be a little bit hypocrite for us not to say that we want to win the World Championships. Of course, we want to win the World Championships. I think it's very important that we stand for the fact that we want to win the World Championships. Especially from like a sports psychology standpoint, I think it's important for us to think about that and to use that as motivation. Another thing that I want to use as motivation is I want to make sure that my players know where they're at in terms of how we're thinking about them. What role do we want to put them in? Where do they? I actually name it their make it or break it points, like stuff that will influence their potential trajectory with us as a team moving forward. Like, if you do these 5 things really good, I could see you climbing the ladder with us. Maybe there's a potential power play spot for you. Maybe there's maybe we will be building a line around you. Or for other categories of players, it might mean, so do these things right, and you will have a realistic chance of actually making the roster for the World Championship. So a very transparent view of our players to motivate them to know where they're at, because I think it's very demotivating as a player to not really know where you're at. You're just doing stuff and you feel that it's not really nothing's really happening. This is, of course, extremely time consuming. So there's, of course, a risk at times that people would still be wondering a little bit where they're at, because there are so many players. Like, we have probably 35 of them in our like extended roster that we try to follow up on. But these 2 things, like having a very clear path to what we want to achieve as a team, which I think we have. I think if you'd interview my players, I think they could tell you how we want to win. Not only that we want to win, but how we want to win. And then the other thing, like I said, being transparent to players where they're at, and always being able to answer the question, what am I supposed to do to get a bigger role? And that, I think that also helps me out, like in a latter stage when I'm supposed to actually finish my roster for a World Championship, for an example. If people have been guided along the way and they know where they're at and they've been motivated during the time, I think the huge disappointment of not being in a World Championship, for an example, should be a little bit easier to swallow if you've been part of the process.